morning. Welcome to another episode of Sound Talk Show. I'm going to explain JavaScript object system. Okay, so can you see my screen? Yes, JavaScript. Okay, so let's show my page. JavaScript, the object system. It is a fantastic, wonderful, simple system. But however, because JavaScript tried to become Java, to look like Java, and therefore it become completely screwed up and very complex. So you got keywords like new, new object, instance of this keyword, prototype property, and constructor property. Prototype key, property, so this becomes extremely complex to this day. And then in 2015, they created the class keyword, which, they are trying to help the situation, but actually completely made it worse, okay? So that is today's topic. I'm just going to explain that. If you are watching this offline, play at 1.5 speed because I ramble a lot. If you are watching here live, say hi. Hello, Sarath. Sarath, is that, are you a guy or a girl? Okay, so let's talk about JavaScript. Okay, so JavaScript object system, a short history. JavaScript is created in 1995 when I started coding in 1994. Okay, so so I watched it grew up along with HTML, JavaScript, Java. Java was also born in 1994, Java language. And Netscape, the browser, the entire internet grew up starting around that time. And CSS wasn't born yet. CSS, Cascading Style Sheet, was born around 1997. Okay, and it wasn't practical until 2002, let's say. So CSS, So anyway, so JavaScript object system is very simple, okay? So it's called prototype-based system, and it is based on the language. It's modeled after the language called Self, okay? I don't know that language. Anyway, so how it works, what it is that you have an object. So first of all, what is an object? What object is kind of like a Python's dictionary or Ruby's hash table or Java's map object, or so it's also known as dictionary, hash table, or map, sometimes known as association list. Basically, it's a collection of items. Each item is a pair, a key and value, okay? And this pair is called property. So again, in JavaScript, a object is a collection of properties. Each property is a key and pair, a key and value pair. Okay, so that is the object. So if you code in Python, you can think of it as a dictionary. Okay, so JavaScript object is kind of like Python's dictionary, collection of pairs. But however, in JavaScript, you have the prototype-based object system, meaning that any object may have a parent, associated parent. Okay, so you got one object, it may have a parent, so this is a daddy of that object. And that object can also have a parent, so you got the daddy, like ancestry, chains of dead daddies. By the way, this is called prototype chain, okay? So anyway, any object can have a parent, a dad, and that object can also have a dad, and so on, until then you have the root object. But it is not necessary every object always have one parent, okay? Some you can create an object that has no parent at all. So for example, the root object doesn't have any parent. So in JavaScript, objects may have a parent, okay? And only one parent, dad, or call it mom. So only one parent. So you got kind of the object tree, okay? So, and anytime you can change, you can set the parent to be some other object. You can do that anytime. Or when you create an object, you can say, okay, I'm creating an object, and this other object is my parent. You can specify that when you create object, okay? Or you can change it anytime you want. And anytime you can add a property, remember object is a collection of key value pairs. Each key value is called a property. So at any time, an object has lots of properties. You can add it anytime or remove it, okay? So very simple. So you have functions to change the parents or create an object when you specify a parent. You can add properties or you can remove properties, all very simple and function and works, okay? So if you want to understand that, by the way, I have a JavaScript in-depth tutorial written starting in 2005. So that's like 20 years ago. So I read the spec, many versions of spec. I spent like a lot of time writing this, okay? JavaScript in depth. And so if you want to understand the prototype-based object system in JavaScript, there is a section, okay? Prototype and inheritance, okay? Very simple. So you can, the prototype chain, parent of object and the parent of that object, and and you can query what is the parent of this object, get the parent, or you can set the parent, change the parent to be some other object, okay? So anyway, so very simple, okay? Or when you create an object, you can say, my parent is this. This is how you do it. Object equals to object.create, and you specify a parent, okay? That's how you create a parent. One of the way to specify a parent object. Very simple, okay? So it's fantastic. So that is the basis. That's the entire basis of JavaScript object system, okay? But however, that's, this is great. This is all you need. In fact, to this day, today's JavaScript, doesn't matter, it's at Google, Amazon, any JavaScript you code is based on this prototype-based system, okay? That's all you need. Create object, set parents, add properties, or remove properties, okay? But however, the JavaScript language became much more complex than that. So we come down to, history of JavaScript, constructors and class complexity. Now remember, before when we talked about the prototype-based object system, there's no mention of class because there's no such concept in JavaScript. Even today, there's no such concept. Okay, but however, back in 1995, there was this language called Java. Okay, Java is meant to be a competitor with C++. So Java is originally, it's a very heavy language. It requires a real programmer. You need to be heavily invested writing. Originally, JavaScript is designed for writing embedded systems, such as the code in your microwave, in your mouse, in your keyboard, in TV, in anything, in your or in space, satellite, whatever. Java, okay, Java is created around 1995. It's a competitor to C++. So C++ was very popular even today and also back then. So there's a new language, Java. We're gonna challenge C++. We're gonna, and Java, the slogan was write it once, run it everywhere. So anyway, that's Java, okay? So Java was created by the corporation called Sun Microsystems. It was a big corporation. It died in around 2006. Oracle bought it. Anyway, that's history. So back in 1995, Sun Microsystems created Java by the guy named James Gosling. Very interesting guy. By the way, he's also one of the original creators of Emacs. Okay, James Gosling, he's one of the original first Emacs is by James Gosling. And he accuses Richard Stallman stole his code, part of it. So James Gosling is the founder. I believe he's the founder, one of the founder of Sun Microsystems. Or was it he original founder? I forgot, but he's a big CEO or tech guy, Sun Microsystems, and he created Java, the language. Okay, so Java is this huge language, so it's for industry use. It's heavy, heavy duty language, Java. So Java, 1995, Sun Microsystems, trying to advertise it, they spend millions of dollars. And then, the web began, the Netscape back then, the browser, there's only one, like almost only one, Netscape, the browser. So they collaborated with Sun Microsystems. They say, why don't you include Java in your browser? Okay, so they agreed, But then also, at the time, they also are creating JavaScript. So why are you creating JavaScript? Because back then, the HTML is static, nothing like today. Today, you go to, it's like interactive JavaScript. So back then, most HTML are written by like non-coders. Like you just type these tags and showing a website. So they want some kind of interactivity to manipulate the HTML so it becomes dynamic. So for example, the first thing you can do, let me show you the first thing in JavaScript that you have is, let me show you some example. The first few examples in JavaScript, okay? So one of them is this image rollover. Okay, so do I have that somewhere here? There, you see, that's the image. You mouse over, it becomes different background. That's one of the first JavaScript made thing back in late 1990s. Okay, it's like everywhere. The other very popular thing, so that's dynamic HTML. You see, without JavaScript, with just HTML, you cannot have like this. You can, but then you send it to server, it's too slow. So image rollover is one of the first thing in JavaScript, kind of the effect. And the other thing is this raining effect. Okay, so let me show you. So DOM image rollover. Okay, stopwatch, fader element, snowing effect. Okay, like that. So you see all these things falling down. So this is around year 2000. You'll see, some website have these. So this is JavaScript. That's like the cutting edge back at the time. So anyway, JavaScript was created to allow HTML to be dynamic, and it's supposed to be a simple scripting language for those people who just write simple HTML. They are not really, most of them are not professional programmers. Back then, they are called web monkeys, okay, web monkeys. Like they know some technical, thing, like, the tag or markup, but they are not actually programmers like C or C++. They are more like designers and writers, or scientists. Scientists are not programmers, at least back then. Scientists, they research rocket science or physics, or mathematicians. They don't know how to code. They don't know how to write, Java or C++ or C. So, but the web at the time, there's a lot of scientists and engineers. They need to talk, so they write HTML. So you can. That's original purpose for scientific communication, HTML. So anyway, 1995, there is this Java programming language going on, and then they are creating a JavaScript language for the browser so it can be interactive. So Java is a heavy-duty programming language, competitor to C++. JavaScript is designed to be like easy for non-programmers. Okay. So 1995, they collaborated with Sun Microsystems to have Java bundled in browser. So they thought, it would be a good idea to make JavaScript look like Java so that, it feels like they are together. Because JavaScript was originally named Mocha. Then it was named LiveScript. Before it was like LiveScript is in one of the beta version of Netscape browser. So they wanted them to be kind of similar. So they tried, one of the goals is like you have to make JavaScript look like Java and kind of like, similar to Java. Okay, so they did that. So that is a big mistake, okay, because the JavaScript programming language, which is modeled on the self, programming language, you have this prototype object system. Like we talked about, object has parents, you can change it anytime, and you have inheritance, meaning that whenever you look up object's property, if the object doesn't have that property, it'll try to look up that object's parents to see if that has that property. If it does, then it's good. If it doesn't, it tries to look up that object's parent again to see if that has that property, okay, until you reach a parent that has no more parent, okay, and if you didn't find any property of that name, then you don't have that property. Otherwise, it looks up. So this is called inheritance. That's what it means, okay, inheritance. So you got this prototype-based system, fantastic and simple. But Java, the language, they have a class-based object system. This is typically known as object-oriented programming. So when people talk about object-oriented programming, they mean Java, okay, that like the Java's way, where you have, you write classes that can specifically inherit other classes. Okay, that's a bit complex to explain. I'm gonna skip it now, okay? But anyway, you have a class-based system. That's Java. And that system is used also in Python, in PHP, in Ruby, in C++, okay? So the so-called object-oriented programming, that system is based on the Java, is based on the Java's class system, or C++. So Java, C++, Python, PHP, Ruby, they are all like that, okay? That is class-based system. But now, because marketing, they say you need to make JavaScript look like Java, so that becomes all the problem. And what made it worse is that the whole JavaScript is created, designed, implemented in 10 days. Okay, so you only got 10 days to do it, and it needs to look like Java, although you are like, you are not Java, but you have to look like Java with the syntax and all that. So that creates all the problems. So today, when you talk to a JavaScript programmer, or if you know JavaScript, so almost every day, you use the new, like new keyword, instance of this keyword, prototype, something dot prototype, and constructor. So why do we have that? Because these are created so that JavaScript looks like Java. Because in Java's class system, you have the idea of new, the new keyword, new something. You have the idea of the instance of some, something. So, and you have the keyword this. So I also have a Java tutorial, but it's not very good. It's, because I haven't coded in Java that much. But if you want to look at that, if you are a beginner, if you want just to simply understand the Java programming language, I have one on xali.info, Java tutorial. So you also have like this keyword, in Java, which is an entirely different thing from JavaScript, okay? So by the way, I created a Java logo. This is my own logo created in 2008. The original Java logo looks like that. Okay, so, and then they change it to look like that. Okay, so in 1995, it's like this, but then in 2003, they try to simplify it because Java is a very kind of heavy, complex language, okay? And the Java's got a mascot, this thing called Penguin. Yeah, Java Penguin. Duke, he's got a name, Duke. Okay, that's history of Java. So so what happens is that they want to make JavaScript to look like Java. So that's why you got this new instance, and it is extremely badly done as well. First of all, it's very bad idea to make it look like Java because one is prototype-based system, the other is class-based. They are not compatible. But they are trying to force it. You gotta make it look like Java because we are like because there's billions dollars of advertising for Java. So that's a big mistake. But then they try to do it in 10 days, so it's entire fuck up. Okay, so if you want to understand the JavaScript new instance of this keyword, it's all in this chapter. Okay, so this binding, you got this binding, you got constructor, the concept of constructor, which came from Java. Okay, Java class constructor. You don't need it in JavaScript because every object, you can create every object just by the braces. When you have a braces, that's an object. You don't need a constructor. But they added that, so it, because Java has it. So you got this constructor idea, then you got this prototype property. Every function magically has this prototype property. Magically. Why? Because in Java, the class system, you need inheritance. Therefore, this is the way, to tie them. It's very bad, okay? You don't need it. So in fact, today, if you are coding JavaScript, this entire, you can never ever use the new keyword, never ever use the instance of keyword, never ever use this keyword and all the others. And your code will become actually simpler to understand, simpler, faster, more efficient. Okay, that is the situation. But unfortunately, that's not the situation in the computing industry because you look at the JavaScript code, the frameworks, they are using this. Why? Because people, they don't know, because they habit and confusion. So that's why they keep using these. So for example, who does not use, like I said, you don't have to you do not need to use any of this in your code to achieve exactly the same thing. Exactly. Okay. For example, Douglas Crawford, who made JavaScript very popular. He's one of the topmost expert of JavaScript. He is in fact responsible for making JavaScript respectable. He wrote the book JavaScript, The Good Parts, around year 2005. Douglas Crawford. Okay, so let me show you. And he's also the creator of JSON format. You probably know JSON. JSON is now very, it's standard. So Douglas Crawford, Douglas Crawford, that's a guy. Okay, I highly respect him. He's one of the guy who study programming languages, and I highly respect his point of view on programming language design. He's now pretty old, so I think he's about to retire. I don't know, but he's pretty old, but he's still kicking. Okay, he's like, I don't know, 60 something. So so you can go watch his videos. So I got, so he also wrote JavaScript, the better parts, and he also wrote a new book. So let me see if I can. So anyway, my point here is he is the one, you see, if you watch his talk, he stopped using the operator new. Like in his code, you will not see it, not one time at all. He doesn't use even object.create. He never uses this key binding. I mean this binding. He doesn't use null, so there's a bunch of others, okay? Some other JavaScript complexities he doesn't use, okay? So anyway, the main point is he doesn't use new, he doesn't use this binding, okay? So you can take it from Douglas Crawford, one of the top JavaScript expert. Okay, so I'm showing this to support my what I'm telling you, that you can totally not use any of the other things, this new and this keyword. Okay, so last part of the story. So that's JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript. Let me summarize in 1 minute. JavaScript, created in 1995, is based on two languages: Self, where it took the prototype-based object system from, and it's also based on Scheme, Lisp, the programming language, which is a kind of like functional programming language. Okay, that is why JavaScript is very kind of known as functional, programming language. So it has a very simple prototype system. But however, because of social reasons, marketing reasons, they try to force JavaScript to look like Java. Therefore, you got a syntax, the JavaScript syntax become like Java. Then you got these new words like new and this, okay? So actually, I should reverse the order of these two. This should come after new. So let me do that. So new, okay, so let me put that new, okay, show in browser. New and this, those two are the most popular keywords in JavaScript. So you don't use that, okay? You can don't use them at all, and your code will be simpler, better, and more efficient. Now, last part of the story. So they try to be like Java, so they become all this complexity, but people adopt it, people use them. Because so why is that? You have so simple a system, you don't need these complexities, but however, you do have both in the language, but most people started to use this complex, construct instead of the simpler. Why is that? Good question, okay? That is because the prototype-based system is not well known. Nobody understand what that is, especially back in 2000s. The reason is because most people are like programmers are industrial programmers. They code C, C++, Java, and they consider those, they are familiar with that class-based system. So nobody understand, not many people understand what is prototype-based system. So that's why they are familiar with, this. They think of them like Java. So they are using those, but they use it wrong because it's not a class-based system. So that is why the coding industry, all the JavaScript coders, they are using using these, okay? Now, last part of the story, and I think that's it for today, okay? So in 2005, JavaScript got lots of problems besides this object system problem. So in 2015, the people tried to overhaul the language. So they started to do, they did a big giant overhaul of the language. But meanwhile, they tried to make it backward compatible. So they added a lot of things to fix JavaScript. For example, one of the big things they added is, if you look at variables, they added the let keyword. Fantastic, because before you have the var, which is very complex and very bad. No scope. Like whenever you use var, the scope is global unless you are using it inside a function. So you cannot declare local variables. Very bad, extremely bad. So after 20 years, in 2015, they added the let keyword. So now you can have local variables. Okay, so if you put it inside the braces, it's local in that braces. Okay, that's one thing they added. They added like a whole lot of things. So let is one thing they added. Another thing they added is, for example, let's go to JavaScript in depth. Let's go to functions. Functions, arrow function. Okay, so now you can actually write a short function like that. Am I good? Say hi, guys. Okay, so arrow functions, fantastic. Okay, so again, remember JavaScript is based on a functional programming language scheme, Lisp. So they added that and lots of other things. But however, they try to remain backward compatible. So they are not removing or deleting anything that's bad. They simply create new things, use these new things, just don't use the old things. But they are still there. So they didn't say, okay, we're gonna remove the new keyword, we're gonna remove this keyword. No, they didn't do that. Okay. But however, they added a new thing, class. Why? Because most people, when they code JavaScript, they are using this complex and unnecessary new something, this something. Then they thought, why don't we just create a class keyword so people actually can create a class just like Java, again, just like Java. But the entire object system is not Java at all. But they just, let's pretend we are coding Java. So they added this keyword, class, new in 2015. Very bad. Okay, it's bad in some way. It's good in some way. Okay, it's bad because you are trying to pretend you are Java, but you are not Java at all. You don't need this class keyword at all. You don't need new, you don't need this, you don't need class, and you can do exactly the same thing with simpler syntax, easier to understand, and more efficient code. But they added the class keyword. So that's bad because you don't need it. But why is class also partly good? Because people are doing this new and prototype thing. That's very complex. So now they created a class keyword, which is kind of this new instance of class, prototype function dot prototype and something. It makes it kind of simpler. So it kind of like make it simpler for those people who are like using this keyword. So that's why they created class keyword in 2015. Okay. I think that's it. That's a kind of the short story of the complexity of JavaScript object system. JavaScript object system is prototype-based system. It's fantastic and simple. However, they added a bunch of crap unnecessarily for marketing reasons, and people adopted them. Then in 2015, they added the class keyword, which is like unnecessary, and that's a short story. So if you want to know the full detail about all these things, this binding, the constructor, the prototype property, every function magically have this prototype property. What does it mean? And if you want to know the new operator, very complex, this new operator, exactly what it does. It's very complex. So you can understand all these instances of operator you should never use, okay? Because it's not reliable. It doesn't, they pretend to do what it does, but actually no. Sometimes it doesn't work. Depending on the situation, things like that. Depending on whether you change the parent or not. So you shouldn't use any of these, okay? Then you got magical constructor property, meaning that there's a property whose type is a string, like that, and the name is constructor, like magically, like whenever you have a Yeah, whenever you create a function, it creates a, whenever you define a function, some function name, parameter, body, whenever you define a function, it magically, automatically behind the scenes creates a function f dot prototype, by magic. And that prototype magically has a object, and this object magically have a constructor property. That's how complex it is, okay? So you got that. Then whenever you do new, so what does new do exactly? Very complex, okay? So here is a detail, so you can read it. And you don't need any of these, okay? So for example, you can, so like you don't need any of them at all to create exactly the same thing, okay? So you got this confusion type of instance of constructor, very confusing. Then 2015, you got this class thing. So what does the class thing do? Well, here I try to explain them in terms of the basic object and prototype based system, okay? So I try to explain that, class system, okay? So then you got, of course, you got the static keyword borrowed from Java. You got the extends keyword, also 2015, borrowed from Java. Then you got the super keyword from 2015, borrowed from Java. Very, very complex. Meanwhile, all this is pretending, it's using the JavaScript prototype system, but pretending it's like the Java system. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Classes make it harder to know the structure of an object. Yes, exactly. Ironically, functional programming is greater than object-oriented programming. Yes, but some people do not believe it, though. So it's not totally, widespread yet, accepted. Okay, so bye guys. If you like my stuff, okay, don't forget to donate to me, okay? Just like, if you like my stuff, go to xali.info, go all the way to the bottom. You can Amazon gift card, click the link, go there, because I cannot accept, Germany's Amazon or Japanese or French, So you gotta click the link and copy paste my email and pay me, or use PayPal, copy paste my email or Patreon me. Thank you guys. Bye.